I'm Alex with Storyline Travel. Storyline Travel, we're family travel specialists, helping families create memorable experiences through travel. This video, we're climbing aboard the McKinley Express, heading to Denali in Alaska. Here we are aboard the McKinley Express. This rail car is a two-story rail car. The top is the viewing deck, which you can see here. It's domed so that you get full view of the landscape around you. For the McKinley Express, the engine is provided by the Alaska Railroad, and they run up and down the tracks. For us, we were leaving from Anchorage and headed into the Denali area to the Denali National Park. And this trip was part of a Holland America Line tour, which we started in Anchorage, and we're headed up to the Denali State Park. We're going to stay at the Holland America McKinley Chalet before then getting on a bus in a few days and heading to Fairbanks. So our full trip was Anchorage to Fairbanks. But the train part of this trip that we're on now started in Anchorage and was going to take us up to the chalet. You can see that we're here in the middle of summer, and one of the things about Alaska is the July time frame marks the beginning of the rainy season. And for our trip on the rail, we definitely had rain. It was still light. It wasn't a heavy rain, so it allowed us to get good views of the scenery. When we left Anchorage, you'll notice a lot of evergreen trees, some of the taller, bigger trees that we had, kind of indicative to that more coastal, warm area. Didn't take us long before we saw some of the Alaska mountain range and some of the peaks. Because of the cloud cover that we had, and in addition, at the time we're doing this trip in 2022, wildfires are a problem in Alaska, and so we also had smoke. We weren't able to see some of the taller peaks, and especially we were never able to see Denali. It was playing hide and seek behind the clouds. But as we're close to the coast in the summertime, you do get the warmer climate, you do get the taller trees. You do get the beautiful mountain peaks, and when the clouds do break, you get to see how wonderful those are. In addition, you'll also see many, many lakes. Alaska has more lakes than any other state in the Union by quite a bit. And so throughout our journey, we had the opportunity to see many lakes and bypasses, rivers and streams. A very interesting thing we learned on this trip about some of the waters and the rivers and streams that you'll see is that when a stream or a river is coming from a glacier, so it's glacier melt or was created through glaciers going through, the water is very silty and it has a milky context. It's very hard for fish to live in. And a lot of the sporting in these rivers in Alaska is more kayaking and river rafting than fishing, versus the spring-fed or just the pure snow melt, where you do have that clear water, and that's where your salmon come up to spawn. And where the two rivers mix at times, it looks like two types of liquids coming together, almost like coffee and water mixing. Quite interesting. The lower parts of the car are where the restroom facilities and the dining area is. We had lunch on this train trip, and it was a lot of fun, like taking a step back in time as we enjoyed our meal on this trip. If you do take the 8-hour ride on the McKinley Express, you will enjoy a lunch during your time. In addition to the dining room and bath facilities, there is a viewing deck out the back of the car on that first level that you can go out and see, without the windows, the beautiful views of Alaska. And this was something that we enjoyed quite a bit, though it is loud, it is noisy being out there, hearing the train tracks and sometimes the wildlife. As we got further inland into Alaska, the scenery did change quite a bit. We saw more rivers that had white water and were running a little faster. We did see some folks out kayaking or riding rafts throughout the rivers. And we also noticed that the landscape started to change, both the terrain as well as the trees. So as I mentioned later, as we were closer to the coast, you've got those evergreens, they're taller and bigger trees. As you get further north and inland, the ground has a layer of permafrost that prevents these trees from having deeper roots. And so what you find is the trees tend to be shorter and almost non-existent. In this area, we learned was called the Tundra. And so you'll see that the size of the trees change. In addition, we did notice, as mentioned before, that this season was a significant number of wildfires, several trees that were burned, and the remaining trunks that were left were just blackened as we got closer to Denali National Park. The other thing I mentioned that changed was the terrain, and as the train got closer, we saw deeper valleys. We were on train tracks that went, felt like miles in the sky, not quite, but you are pretty high over some of these valleys. And so the land changes from that coastal, more flat land into the deep ravines and valleys that make up the Alaska terrain as you get closer to the national park, closer to the mountains, and near Denali. So for us, we're leaving the coast, heading inland. Like I said, our final destination would end up being the Denali Chalet and then eventually Fairbanks. Just to note, if you take a cruise after this land tour, your McKinley Express journey will begin in Denali and head down to Anchorage. You'll go the reverse of the way we did. Are you ready to hit the rails? If so, give us a comment below. Let me know what you thought about the scenery and our trip to Denali National Park. And at Storyline Travel, we believe every adventure is a story waiting to be told.